Welcome to the deep dive. I was just walking the grounds this morning, and it is April 2026. The azaleas at Augusta National are in full bloom, but
Feels different.
it really does. For the first time in, well, nearly 30 years, that defining roar is just gone. I mean, no Tiger Woods, no Phil Mickelson in the field.
Yeah, it's a massive vacuum.
Exactly. And our mission today is to take this massive stack of sources we have, the architectural breakdowns, the meteorological forecasts, equipment logs, betting previews, and really decode what is going to happen this week because we want to help you cut through the nostalgia and understand the hitting strategies, the physics, and the narratives defining this historic week.
Because to truly understand the Masters, you have to look right past that tradition and the pageantry. I mean, we've covered this tournament for decades, and it is so easy to get lost in the beauty of the property.
Oh, absolutely. The widest fairways in competitive golf just lull you to sleep.
Right. But if you want to know who is actually going to slip on that green jacket on Sunday, you have to understand the math, the topography, and really the sheer emotional endurance required to survive these 72 holes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because right out of the gate, that absence of Tiger and Phil it's a glaring fact jumping out of our sources. We are officially in a new era, but nature abhors a vacuum, right? And stepping right into that space is our defending champion, Rory McIlroy.
Finally.
Right. We all remember the absolute chaos of last year, Rory finally completing his career Grand Slam with that dramatic playoff victory over Justin Rose.
He looked like a man who had a 1,000-pound weight lifted off his chest.
He really did, and he's leaning into it now. I loved this one detail from the sources. For the champions' dinner tonight, Rory is serving Wagyu filet and elk, and he jokingly assured Scottie Scheffler that cheeseburgers would definitely not be on the menu.
That's great. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the real story isn't just about Rory defending. It's about the staggering historical improbability of what he's actually trying to do.
Because repeating is so rare.
It is the rarest air in golf. I mean, in the 90-year history of this event, only Jack Nicklaus, Nick Faldo, and Tiger Woods have successfully defended their titles.
That is a wild statistic. I mean, why is it so incredibly difficult? You're talking about the best players in the world arriving in peak form.
It comes down to the unique defense mechanisms of the golf course itself. Look, Augusta doesn't just test your swing, it tests your memory.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Every time you stand over a shot, you are battling the ghosts of your past mistakes. And then you add the pressure of wearing the green jacket, hosting that dinner we just talked about, fulfilling the media obligations. It drains your emotional reserves before you even tee off on Thursday morning.
So to understand why Rory or Scheffler or the LIV guys face such a monumental task, we have to look at how the course breaks them down.
Precisely. You have to understand the architecture.
Well, let's talk about that breakdown. Because when I look at the architectural data in our sources, it almost doesn't make sense to a casual fan. People ask, why is it so hard? There's no thick rough.
None.
The fairways are the widest on the PGA Tour, averaging, about 51 yards wide. It looks like you can just bomb away off the tee without consequence. I've been thinking about it like a high-stakes casino.
How so?
Well, it seduces you with these wide-open fairways to make you feel completely safe, It invites you to be aggressive. But the house edge is quietly hidden in the greens.
That is a great analogy, but I'd add a crucial twist. In a real casino, the odds never change. At Augusta, that house edge shifts every single hour depending on the wind, the sun, and the moisture in those greens.
Right.
What people don't fully grasp, and what we've seen sitting by the 18th green for over half a century, is that Augusta National is the ultimate second-shot golf course.
The sources actually call it a tale of two courses on the exact same property.
Yes. The statistical truth here is stark. To win the Masters, you must absolutely dominate the 4 par 5s, and you must simply survive the brutally difficult par 4s.
The numbers in the sources on this are just staggering. Since 2017, Masters champions are a combined 67 under par on the par 5s.
67 under. Let that sink in. The winner is almost always the player who just feasts on the 2nd, the 8th, the 13th, and the 15th holes.
Because you have to make your birdies and eagles there.
Exactly. Because the long par 4s, like the 5th and the 11th, they are actively designed to bleed you out with bogeys.
And it all comes down to what happens when you actually reach those greens. Let's look at the mechanics here. We're talking about legendary bent grass putting surfaces. They are mowed down to 0.125 inches.
Practically shaved.
Right. And they are running at a lightning fast 13 to 14 on the stimp meter. Now, for anyone who isn't a golf nerd, a 14 on the stimp meter means if you roll a golf ball down a standard 20-degree angled ramp, It will travel 14 feet on a completely flat surface.
It's terrifying.
Putting on Augusta's bentgrass is literally like trying to stop a marble on a slanted pane of glass. Gravity has far more control over the golf ball than the player does.
And you have to remember, that glass-like surface is intentionally maintained by the underground sub-air system.
The vacuums.
Right, think of it as a massive vacuum underneath the greens that literally sucks the moisture out of the turf to keep them as firm as concrete. Because of those severe slopes and that speed, three-putt avoidance becomes the single most critical putting statistic this week.
Which makes sense because the sources note Augusta has a tour-high 4.24% three-putt rate.
Meaning everyone is going to miss putts here. Everyone. It is unavoidable.
So what's the counter strategy?
Well, the mathematical advantage shifts entirely to the elite iron players. Distance control is infinitely more important than direction at Augusta.
Wait, explain that difference. Distance over direction.
If you miss a target by just 3 yards left or right, the aggressive contours of the green might funnel your ball 50 feet away. And suddenly you're left with a downhill slider that you barely want to breathe on, let alone putt.
Wow.
The players who succeed are the ones who can control their trajectory and spin, landing the ball softly on the correct quadrant of the green. They stick it inside 10 feet, so they don't have to putt defensively.
But the players can't just rely on their historical yardage books this year, right? Because the physical battlefield has literally changed since Rory won in 2025.
What's fascinating here is how Augusta National uses these minor surgical tweaks to completely alter the strategic geometry of a hole.
Yeah, let's look at the 17th hole. The official change this year is that the 17th tee box has been reduced by 12 yards, so it drops the hole to 450 yards. Now, on paper, 12 yards sounds like nothing.
But it changes everything.
Because if they're moving from a mid-iron to a short iron or a wedge on their approach shot, that entirely changes the descent angle of the ball, right? Suddenly, they can drop it straight down and stop it on those firm greens instead of bouncing off the back.
That is the exact mathematical calculation the committee is forcing. In the context of a Sunday afternoon, it is everything. I mean, last year, the 17th was the 4th hardest hole on the course.
It was brutal.
It demanded a mid-iron approach that usually came in too flat. That makes the firm, unforgiving green incredibly hard to hold. By shaving off those 12 yards, Augusta changes the math. A player might now be holding a pitching wedge.
Which takes a hole that was traditionally built for pure survival and turns it into a potential late birdie opportunity.
Exactly. It is a brilliant setup for late Sunday drama right before the 18th hole.
It's genius. And there are unofficial changes, too. The sources note they've subtly leveled the back right of the second green.
Ah, yes.
For years, players used that specific slope as a backstop, right? To funnel their approach shots back toward the hole. By leveling it, Augusta has essentially taken away the player's safety net.
It forces them to be even more precise. But, the most unpredictable variable this year isn't a man-made change at all. It's the aftermath of Hurricane Helene.
Yeah. The storm knocked down a significant number of trees across the property. When you see the drone footage in our sources, it just looks different. It's opened up these beautiful, sweeping new vistas.
It's stunning, really.
But from a strategic standpoint, how does losing those towering pines actually impact the tournament?
It changes the invisible architecture of the course. The wind. You see, Augusta is situated in a valley, and those trees acted as a natural buffer, a windbreak. Without them, the wind whistles through the property in entirely new, unpredictable ways.
And the forecast is calling for a northeast, east-northeast wind this week.
Which is incredibly significant. That specific wind direction means the sweeping par 5 13th will play downwind, making it highly reachable in 2 shots.
But there's a catch.
There's always a catch at Augusta. The real danger is at Amen Corner. The 12th hole, that beautiful, terrifying little par 3 over Rays Creek, will feature a swirling cross to headwind.
We've seen this on the broadcast so many times over the years. The players feel the breeze on their face at the tee box, but they look at the tops of the pines behind the green, and the branches are blowing in the exact opposite direction.
It induces absolute paralysis. I've watched the greatest players in history just freeze on that tee box. The geography of Amen Corner forms a natural bowl, and the wind gets trapped in there, swirling in circles.
And the lack of tree cover from Helene is going to amplify that swirl.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
Club selection on the 12th is going to be an absolute nightmare this year. A tiny miscalculation in judging that invisible swirl, a sudden gust when the ball is at its apex and your ball is in the water. We will see green jackets lost on that hole this year.
Which brings us to a really fascinating part of our sources, how the players are actually arming themselves for this specific battlefield, because you don't bring standard gear to an atypical war zone.
No, the equipment choices at Augusta are always highly specialized to combat the turf and the wind.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The equipment logs are tracking a massive spike in a very specific club, the mini driver. Currently, 18.3% of the field is carrying one this week.
That's a huge jump.
It is. It's up from just 6.3% last year. Guys like Tommy Fleetwood and Dustin Johnson have put them in the bag. But hang on, you're losing me here. The whole strategy so far has been bomb it to conquer the par fives.
Right.
So why on earth are so many top players, including world number one Scottie Scheffler, intentionally putting smaller, weaker drivers and seven woods into their bags? Isn't he just giving up his biggest advantage?
It seems completely counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Why sacrifice distance on a course that demands you conquer the long holes, but it goes right back to the sub-air system and the firmness of those greens?
We're concrete.
Exactly. Augusta requires high, incredibly soft landing approach shots into those par fives. A standard 3-wood, which most players use to reach a par 5 in 2 shots, comes in too hot and too flat. The trajectory is shallow.
So it hits the frame putting surface and just skips right off the back into the runoff areas.
That's right. The ball just doesn't have the braking power. So players are willing to sacrifice 10 or 15 yards of total distance off the tee or the fairway to gain maximum height and trajectory control on their approach.
Ah, I see.
A mini driver, or a 7-wood like Scheffler's custom setup, launches the ball high into the Georgia sky and drops it at a steep vertical angle. It's the difference between skipping a stone across a pond and dropping a bowling ball straight down.
That is a great visual.
That steep descent angle is the perfect strategic weapon for holding the firm greens on the 8th, 13th, and 15th holes.
That makes so much sense. It's all about stopping power. And the gear tweaks don't stop there. The sources are full of these fascinating, highly technical micro adjustments.
Like Rory.
Yes, Rory McIlroy has switched to tailor-made P7CB irons and the new TP5 ball. He's looking for a ball that has a modern launch profile to get that high trajectory we just talked about, but interacts with the grooves of his irons to provide a traditional, softer feel around the greens.
And then you have a player like Livy star Bryson DeChambeau, who approaches the game like a literal physicist.
Right. He's out here using single-length Avoda irons. For those who don't know, single-length irons mean his 4-iron is the exact same length as his 9-iron.
Which is incredibly unusual.
Yeah. Usually they are all cut to the length of a 7-iron. The theory is that under extreme pressure, you only need one repeatable posture and swing plane, removing the variable of club length. And he's also specifically switched to Bettinardi wedges to get better gear effect.
And we should really explain gear effect because it's a vital concept at Augusta. When you strike a golf ball slightly off-center on the club face, say, toward the club head twists,
Okay.
the physics of that twist actually imparts a counterspin on the golf ball, pushing it back toward the center line. Bryson is using customized wedge faces where the center of gravity is engineered to maximize this exact effect.
That is wild.
He knows the tight shaved turf around Augusta's greens offers zero margin for error. If he mishits a delicate chip by a fraction of a millimeter, he relies on the physics of that specific wedge to correct the spin and grip the turf.
That is just an insane level of detail. And we're also seeing this rise of equipment free agents. Guys like Patrick Reed who aren't tied to a specific multi-million-dollar brand contract, so they just play whatever works for the specific conditions of the week.
Right. Yeah.
Reed is out there rolling a Scotty Cameron Tour Rat iPutter just because he likes how it feels on the glass-like grains. So the players are using space-age physics, descent angle geometry, and custom metallurgy to try and beat the course.
But Augusta isn't just sitting there relying on 1930s dirt and grass to defend itself.
Not at all. The evolution of Augusta's infrastructure is just as aggressive as the player's technology. It's this beautiful, almost stubborn contradiction.
It really is.
On one hand, Augusta is the most ultra-traditional place on Earth. They strictly ban cell phones for the patrons. If you want to know who is leading, you look at a massive manual scoreboard manned by volunteers sliding wooden Roman numerals into place.
It preserves this incredible old-world 1950s aesthetic.
Exactly. But behind that 1950s scoreboard, they are quietly fighting back with tens of millions of dollars of their own sports science.
Oh, without a doubt. This year, they've unveiled a brand new 3-story player services building located right behind the practice range. It is exclusively for the players, their caddies, and families.
The sources say it has high-end dining, private lounges, and cutting-edge physio and recovery facilities.
Not to mention their digital streaming tech, which literally captures every shot, every hole, using countless cameras and AI tracking. It is a masterful balancing act.
They fiercely protect the visual heritage of the broadcast, ensuring you, the viewer at home, feel that wave of nostalgia.
But simultaneously providing the competitors with the most advanced athletic support system in the world.
Yeah.
They respect the past, but they absolutely refuse to be left behind by the future.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the competition itself. We are looking at a week of ideal, sunny, 70-degree weather, minimal rain. That means perfect, albeit firm and fast, scoring conditions.
The course will be a rocket ship.
And let's set the broader context here. This
Yeah.
is one of the few times a year where the fractured world of professional golf actually reunites. You have the stars of the PGA Tour and the stars of the Livy Golf Circuit, who rarely play against each other anymore, colliding on the same property.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
So with this incredibly stacked, unified field, who is actually going to win this thing?
Well, if you look at history, the betting favorites usually tell a strong story. But this year, the depth of the field is remarkable.
The sources show Scottie Scheffler leading the pack at plus 550, which makes sense. His mind is his greatest weapon. He never seems to panic.
Never.
Then you have Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau sitting at plus 1100. Both are coming in hot with incredible form from the LIV circuit. Bryson, in particular, has 2 recent wins and has finally learned to marry his immense physical power with the delicate touch required around these greens.
And this is what makes 2026 so compelling. We are looking at a competitive landscape that is fundamentally different from the last 30 years.
Because there's no tiger looming over everyone.
Exactly. Without a singular dominant figure, and with the very best players from both tours arriving in absolute peak form, this is arguably the flattest, most wide-open Masters we've seen in recent memory.
Anyone in that top tier could easily slip on the jacket on Sunday.
They could. But the winner won't just be the guy hitting it the furthest. The winner will be the player who demonstrates the greatest emotional control.
Surviving the ghosts.
Right. The player who best navigates that invisible, swirling wind at Amen Corner. The player who stays patient on the brutal par 4s and ruthlessly capitalizes on the par 5s. Augusta is a course of precision, not power. It demands that you understand its rhythms, rather than trying to fight against them.
So what does this all mean for you listening? As you settle in to watch the 90th Masters, you are witnessing a collision of old ghosts and new tech. You have Rory McIlroy chasing the way of history and a rare repeat. You have Scottie Scheffler methodically chasing a modern dynasty.
And Bryson bringing space-age physics to a course built in the Great Depression.
Exactly. And waiting for all of them is Augusta National itself. Firm, fast, slightly altered, and as unforgiving as it has ever been.
This raises an important question, though. A lingering thought I want to leave you with, drawn directly from the architectural debates in our sources.
Oh, here we go.
We've spent a lot of time today talking about how the players are constantly adapting their gear. The mini drivers, the high-lofted woods, the single-length irons, all to try and beat the golf course. But what if the course eventually decides to completely fight back?
You're talking about the KVV theory.
I am. Kevin Van Valkenburg, a noted golf writer in our stack of sources, suggested a truly fascinating scenario. To protect the strategic integrity of Augusta National, to stop players from just booming it over all the carefully designed hazards, Chairman Ridley and the club might eventually use their immense, undeniable power in the sport to force a massive change.
The local rule.
Yes. What if, as a condition of entry, the Masters mandates that players must use smaller 400cc driver heads instead of the massive 460cc heads they use today?
That would be wild. Because a smaller club head means significantly less forgiveness. If you miss the sweet spot by a fraction, the ball doesn't just lose a little distance, it hooks right into the pine straw.
Exactly. It would bring all the hazards in the trees right back into play off the tee, completely punishing the bomb and gouge strategy.
It would fundamentally reward elite, precise ball striking again.
It would change professional golf overnight. So, as you watch the drives soaring into the Georgia sky this weekend, ponder this. As technology continues to push the absolute limits of the sport, will Augusta National eventually stop changing its physical holes and start changing the players' clubs?
It is the ultimate flex of power, and honestly, if any club on earth could enforce it, it's Augusta. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources. We've unpacked the stats, the strategy, and the psychology of the greatest tournament in golf. Enjoy the broadcast, respect that 12-hole wind, and have a fantastic Masters weekend.